Hello and welcome to VGM Vibes 4, the fourth installment of a series I created a little while ago where we explore the kind of different biomes and areas of games that are kind of common, settings, and just themes that you might run into more than once. We've covered forest themes, I've done battle themes, and most recently aquatic themes, and now we're getting into the castles. Now, with this one, it was a little tricky, because I could have gone a couple ways with it. I could have done palaces and things like that, but overall, just castles, and it really made me think. Like, what's the first thing you think of when you think of castles? You think of like big royal, like regal sounds, horns. You envision like the red carpet, stone walls, torches, stuff like that. It's like a quintessential video game setting if you really think about it. And I think all of us at some point have experienced a castle stage. I think it's in almost every type of genre, right? It's like in fighting games, it's like in racing games and RPGs. It's just kind of like it's a cool thing, right? It's like, I don't think they exist here in North America. I think they're like mostly like European. I would love to visit one, but it's just an iconic setting. And I think with that, developers obviously want to make really cool music that stands out for it, and it's a mixture. As I've learned, there's quite a bit of stuff. There's stuff that sounds scary, big. There's like metal stuff, and today we're going to be covering all that from different years, genres, consoles, composers. I've got a collection, and we're going to start off strong with one of my favorite games that I discovered here on the channel because of its music. And just as a preface, these are not ranked whatsoever. They are just castle themes. And of course, if I missed one, which I'm sure I did, let me know. And there might be another episode of these down the line. But enjoy a castle themed VGM Vibes 4. You're going to start off with a bang. To whom does the true voice speak? If you don't know what I'm talking about, I cannot tell you because this would be a spoiler, and just kind of for some future songs that are going to be on here, there's going to be some spoiler stuff, but I'm going to pretty much avoid spoilers as much as I can just because I do believe that no matter how long a game's age is or something, like people just experience it at different times. We all have different lives. I'm an example. I play these games really late. But I will tell you that this is vaguely a theme you're going to hear a lot throughout the game, and it is revolving around a very specific place, and you're going to revisit this place quite a bit. And what I like about the Shadow Lord Castle theme is that there's many variants, right? Both in gameplay and song. Like you visit this place from like each angle, the side, on the ground floor, top, back. Like it's kind of this place that you just kind of keep coming back to. But the thing about the song is that since it exists in multiple versions, this would be the I guess like the memory version, right? This song, the thing about the song is that it kind of progresses with time, and it starts off with this sort of memory sound that we're hearing now, which is very organ based and choir, and it sounds really like glitchy and a little creepy. It almost sounds like some of the stuff is like reversed, but I'm not entirely sure. And it's a song that just keeps going, and as you progress through this castle, the song starts to build, and it turns into another song called Shadow Lord Castle Roar, and then finally leading up to its climax, Shadow Lord, which is my second favorite song of that game. And for those that don't know, Nier Replicant, I should mention this is from Nier, the original game. That's like a whole complicated thing, but basically nowadays people just know it as Nier Replicant, which is the latest iteration of it from 2021. Without getting way into it, it's just the newest version that's all nice and polished. While the soundtracks did change, and that's a whole other thing. This song we're hearing, and the one I prefer, is the one from the original game. So it's it's not your traditional castle, with the whole like stone thing, but in a way, kind of, yeah. I mean, I don't like it's hard to like kind of beat around the bush, but overall, the song is just something that is haunting and will stick with you. And I find it fascinating how it just keeps growing enough to the point where I didn't like this song at first when I reacted to it. Well, I didn't react to this one. I reacted to Shadow Lord, but basically, I wasn't like the biggest fan of it until I experienced it in game, and then kept hearing it, and then it became like one of my favorites. So it's funny how that works. But of course, you know, anyone who knows me now is like I'm always preaching about Nier. I've seen it in concert. I didn't even know what Nier was 2 years ago. Now it's like just everybody should play Nier. So yeah, this is my first pick. Is the Shadow Lord's Castle Memory, and I guess a shout out would be to Roar and to Shadow Lord, but Memory is the one, like the main motif of the game, and it is quite fascinating to me. Up next on the list is from a racing game called Gran Turismo, and it might be the only song on here that may not have to do anything with a physical castle, but it's in the title. But not only that, is the song actually does have some parts, mainly the intro, that kind of resemble a castle theme, so it kind of works out. This song is very interesting for many reasons, which I'm going to gush about now. But first of all, I would like to point out that I discovered the song sort of by accident. One of the few times I did a collaboration with another YouTube channel, shout out to Tarvold's Quest, asked me to be on his show to do like a video game music trivia with alongside of Note Block and Johnny Adma, aka Gametal, which was super dope for me. And we were hearing songs and we were trying to see who knew it. And he had this song on here, and I was like, "What is that? That was cool." And it was cool enough for me to like ask him what it was and look into it. And then I find out it's Gran Turismo, and I was like, I played Gran Turismo as a kid, right? Like a long time ago. This game is from 1997, and I played the second one too. But I didn't recognize the song. And then after I do some Googling, I see that this was the Japan release. So this was there the whole time when I just had no idea. And I even mentioned in my reaction to it, because I reacted to it later to hear the whole thing, that I thought the Gran Turismo 1 opening in North America was fantastic with the Chemical Brothers. I thought it matched so well, and I still think that. But when I saw it again with the Japan release, I was like, oh dude, this song is... They both match, but dude, the Japan one is just like, wow. It's just, wow. This song is so catchy in every single aspect of it. All the guitar parts, every melody is going to get stuck in your head. The drums are cool. Speaking of the drums, I saw the credits, and it's Nick Mensa, aka the drummer from Megadeth. Super random, but Nick Mensa is the drummer here. And another musician note is this is Masahiro Ando, who is I guess like the main writer of T-Square. So this whole thing is just like this lore dump. And the main thing I should talk about, this is the main theme of Gran Turismo. So since the first game, to my knowledge, it's been in every single game. Maybe not the spin-offs, I'm not sure, but it's in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And man, it just has this like nostalgic value to it. The community calls it the national anthem of Gran Turismo. And it's just such a beautiful song, especially if you're into that kind of like Black Mage's organ style. Like there's the organ solos full of guitars. It's just kind of feels instantly iconic the first time you hear it. And honestly, it might be one of your favorites. I think it's that strong of a song. And to be totally honest, I have no idea what the title is even referring to, because it's a simulating racing game. But the intro does indeed have like a castle quality. It's all regal sounding, and the horns, and then I don't know, but I totally thought I could fit in here. And anytime I get to talk about this game, which I loved growing up, I'm not even a car person, a little bit, but this game was like something else. And I'm glad to see that it still kept going. You know, I remember seeing the development, a video of the development of 2, and you can see the producer there, and he's like super passionate, and he's like, you know, getting teary-eyed of like now he's making games. It's really cool stuff, man, and you can tell Gran Turismo is like a passion thing, and you know, I haven't played it since 2, but I think there's like a, I don't know if esports is the right word, but you know, it's still going and people play it, and it's cool. I need to start watching some competitive Gran Turismo or something. But yeah, Moon Over the Castle is just one of those songs that you hear one time and it's probably going to stick with you for the rest of your life. And if you were like me and only experienced 1 and 2 with their American opening, definitely check out the Japanese versions, and it might wow you like it did to me. So yeah, really cool, dude. Gran Turismo Moon Over the Castle. And one little more thing I should note that this is one of the fastest songs on this list at 207 BPM, but not the fastest. We'll get into that later. But next, we move on to a game that I think makes a lot of sense to be on this list. And of course, how can we have a video about castle themes in video games without mentioning Castlevania? This is a game I haven't played though, so I don't know much about it. This is Curse of Darkness, and this is Abandoned Castle. Now, you might be thinking, why didn't I just put like Symphony of the Night here, which is my only Castlevania, a game I discovered here on the channel, and because of the music I wanted to play it, so that is my only experience. But I've already talked about that game in depth and its soundtrack and how incredible it is, so I kind of wanted to talk about other stuff. And in this case, you know, I wanted to do some variety, and there's games on here that I definitely know stuff about. There's some I don't know anything about, and this is one of them. So, Curse of Darkness, from what I've seen, which is very little, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the opening stage, so it's like the first song you hear. It's 3D Castlevania, so you got 3 dimensions to work with. And we have a character, I could be wrong about this too, like again, I didn't do too much research on it. I think his name is Hector. But either way, 3D, and the song reminds me, since it's the very beginning, I guess the equivalent would be to Symphony of the Night is when you start off in Symphony of the Night and you're Richter, you have the song Prologue, right, with this like heavy guitars going. It's kind of the same thing, it just kind of like throws you into the action. I remember I reacted to the song quite a bit, and it kind of captivated me back then. And it's Michiru Yamane, who I've been listening to for longer than I thought, because my experience with her as a composer wasn't actually Castlevania first. It was Skullgirls, a game I've talked about many times on this channel. It's one of my top 5 favorite soundtracks, if you didn't know. And she's not the main composer there, but she's one of them. There's a handful. And some of my favorite songs in that game come from her. And so when I started to hear Castlevania music, it was like an easy transition. I was like, oh, sounds like Skullgirls. But only if I didn't know that she's been making music like 20 years prior to that. So the sound of Castlevania, the sound of you know, like a lot of the themes for these songs in this video, like she's mastered that. You know, the piano, the organ stuff, this gothic sound, and it's just kind of a bonus that it seems to be infused with some kind of like rock and metal. And I think it's just like a formula for success. You know, I've probably heard, not counting Symphony of the Night, I've probably heard maybe like 4 or 5 total Castlevania songs in my life. I've heard Bloody Tears, of course. I've heard, you know, kind of like the main ones that I can't remember their names right now. But there's still a whole bunch of games I haven't heard and a whole bunch of songs. So I don't know how much they deviate, but I do know they tend to go into like a sort of hip-hop territory as well, like sort of beats, and you know, there's Wandering Ghost, which is a little like Spanish, also kind of bluesy. But I don't know if I think typically they kind of have like this, you know, quintessential castle sound with the organs and just this, it just sounds like you're there in like a stone-walled building. So I think it was kind of a no-brainer to have Castlevania here. I probably could have filled up this whole list with Castlevania songs. And technically this isn't even my favorite song from Castlevania. It's just, you know, I wanted to give a light to maybe a not so popular game in the series, although I have no idea how popular this game is or isn't. If I had to assume, I would say, and this is just a straight assumption, that it's maybe not so popular because it's 3D. I think most people associate Castlevania with the 2D platformer, but let me know if it looked kind of cool in the video I saw. But I mean, song-wise, you got synths, you got guitars, you got drums. It's just very, very dope. And I want to know more about it. I've only heard Curse of Darkness one time, and it's this song. So I want to know what makes this castle abandoned. So even though it's on this list, I barely know anything about it. But I do love the way it sounds. Next on the list is a game called Banjo-Kazooie, similar to the last one. I also have not played it and don't know much about it. It is from the Nintendo 64 and it is made by Rare, composed by Grant Kirkhope. And to be honest, it's just more one of those things that I just kind of wanted to put in here to talk about it because I don't get to experience Grant Kirkhope a lot, but I know he's like considered a legend. And from what I've heard, which is very little, he's quite talented. And I think the only thing that would make this a castle theme is I kind of shoehorned it in here is it's his final boss theme, and I don't think it's a castle, but I saw the fight and the very top of this place where the fight takes place, it looks like a castle. So I'm kind of just throwing it in here. So let me know if you think it counts, but it kind of doesn't. But the song, though, I think we can all agree that it is holy moly. When I first heard the song, I was just in shock of how, I don't even know, progressive, classical. It was just, it's so whimsical. It's like very cartoon-like, you know. And from what I've seen in like comments and like kind of what's happening here, again, it's like it's the finale, it's the final boss theme. But apparently this this witch character, which is I believe called Gruntilda. I should look this up, but I didn't. One of those names. She's been kind of like pestering you and annoying you the entire game. So it's this kind of satisfaction type of fight, which now that I think about it is kind of common. And, you know, they're always bugging you until you get that last laugh. And from my understanding, this is more of like a tree level that you're ascending. But again, the very top of it looks like the top of a castle. So I'm totally cheating here. That's okay though. This song, to be totally honest, I just wanted to talk about it because I remember it stood out so hard, even to this day. You know, I hear so many songs all the time, and for something to stick out that hard, it's something. You know, it's I didn't experience Nintendo growing up, and I feel like this is the kind of song and this is the kind of game and this is just the aura of the stuff that people were talking about. This is what made stuff like the Nintendo, you know, really shine in like the 90s and pretty much to this day. You know, this is one of the contributors to being iconic. I've heard of Banjo-Kazooie, but I don't know what it is. To my understanding, it's like a action platformer similar to Crash. I guess Crash would be my equivalent. But man, this song, apparently, this was Grant Kirkhope's first boss theme ever. So apparently it was quoted, I didn't see the quote, but take this with a grain of salt that he wanted to give it his all since it was his first one. And man, understatement. This thing is just, it's like a roller coaster. It just goes this way, it goes in a loop, goes that way. It's just full of chaotic sounds. And apparently the fight is also as chaotic. So it quite fits. And like I said, this might be one of the only ones that don't really fit the theme. But if you see the fight like I did, you might see where I'm getting at. So I kind of just cheated on the visuals. That it just definitely looks like a castle at the top. It also reminded me of like an evil parade. If you can imagine what a parade would sound like. Now imagine that, but evil, that's what the final battle sounds like. So don't know if Banjo-Kazooie is still around, if their time is up, or if they're still making games. I think they made an appearance in Smash. I could be wrong. So yeah, I need to hear more Grant Kirkhope. And with that said, we're going to move on to something that I thought was, well, it was unplanned, but I thought it was kind of funny. But we're going to move on to another composer who is similar in the rare world. And I think these two are friends. And you'll see what I mean when I talk about it coming up next. Up next is Mickey's Racing Adventure, a game that I would be very surprised if you've even heard about. I'm surprised I even heard about it. I don't even know how I came across this game, to be totally honest. But this song is called Race Against Pete, and this takes place in the dungeon / mansion. It's basically a castle if you've ever seen it. This game was on the Game Boy Color. I don't know if it was on any other Game Boy, but for sure the Color, because I played it. I think this was during the time where I only had Pokemon Yellow for the Game Boy Color, and I think I just wanted to like branch out and just try different stuff. And I don't remember if this was purchased or if I rented it. I don't remember, but I did play it, and it was fun. You know, it's like this isometric racing game with Mickey and friends. You got Donald and Goofy and Daisy and all that, but it's a kind of like, there's a lot to do. There was like an adventure game with it. You can walk around. It's not just racing. There was puzzles. And I didn't know until when I started recording this video that this is actually David Wise. And that was like, oh, cool. You know, there's a reason I thought the music was cool back then. But that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this song, is because of the back then. Back then, I didn't really use headphones with my Game Boy. I don't think a lot of people did, maybe. And to be completely honest, I don't even know if the Game Boy has a headphone jack, even though it's right behind me on that shelf. I never really played it like that. But the thing about this song is that I just remember it sounding so good through that little speaker. And it stuck with me for forever, really. I'm still here talking about it. And when I thought about that, it made me think, that's something we can't ever, like, get again, right? Like, in this day and age, you can emulate games, you can play them, but you'll never have that experience again of holding it physically in your hand and hearing it through a tiny little speaker. The closest we can come to that is someone recording, like with their camera, that experience, but who's going to do that, you know? So if you ever get the chance to somehow hear Mickey's Racing Adventure on the Game Boy Color IRL, I just thought it was a fantastic experience. The song is super underrated, right? It doesn't have the most views. It's Pete is the main antagonist, so when you fight him, you're fighting him in his, or when you're racing him in his mansion, it's basically a castle. You know, it's got the vibes of one. It's got it's like on a hill, and it's got these like elaborate wings coming out of the building, and this game was kind of underrated. Oh, it says right there, only for Game Boy Color. I should do more research, but yeah, every time I've talked about this game, no one knows about it. It's just one of those kind of deep cuts that I think, you know how everyone that's watching, they probably have a game that they've played that probably no one else knows. I think this is definitely one of them for me. And I don't remember being it that long. It's been more than 20 years since I played it, so it's all coming back to me right now. But yeah, definitely Race Against Pete is an underrated song. It's creepy sounding. It is just full of this pulsing energy that once you hear it, it's probably going to get stuck in your head. So perfect time to talk about it. Where else than VGM Vibes? And that is Race Against Pete. Let me know if you played this game. But check out the rest of the soundtrack. It is David Wise. And that's always good. If you don't know, of course, that's the Donkey Kong composer and many, many, many other things. So from racing, we're going to go to a genre that may or may not show up a couple times on this list, and that is RPGs. Next on my list is a game called Legend of Dragoon from the PlayStation 1. This is Royal Castle, although it is not strictly set in one location. I normally associate it with the with Bale and Indel's castle, but it also plays in Fletz. So this is the first time you see it and hear it. It's in the hometown of Lavitz. This place is really cool because this is one of my favorite little towns in the whole game. It's really early on. The whole place has this kind of like sunset look to it. There's a river that goes through it. There's a drunk guy. There's a lot of shops, a lot of places you can enter, a library. It's one of the nicer areas. And the castle is kind of like multi-layered. You can see there's multiple entrances. There's a horse stable. The thing about this song is, well, first of all, Legend of Dragoon, just a quick backstory, is a game that I think is severely underrated. It's kind of lived in the shadows of Final Fantasy because it's kind of came out around the same time. And it was a one-time thing. It didn't sell too well, so it kind of just vanished. The producer of the game, I think, has gone on to do other stuff. So this is kind of a fan favorite game, though. You know, I played it recently. I played a demo of it when I was very, very young, and I played that one stage, and I remember that I remember that because it was like the first RPG type game I ever played. I never even played a game where there was like turn-based and stuff. But it wasn't until years and years later when I discovered the music for it here, and then it came out on the PS5, and that's how I played it. And I have a playthrough of it here. And of course, the entire soundtrack is incredible. It's Dennis Martin and Takeo Muratsu. One of them is still with us, and that is Dennis Martin from the USA. And that whole story of the composition is its own thing, right? Like, I don't even think they spoke to each other, maybe, but they basically made the soundtracks. They kind of sort of split the soundtracks more or less 50-50. And they didn't really have too much communication, I think, between themselves. I think they just had their own assignments of songs, and you can tell the difference between them once you hear a couple songs. Which, by the way, I should shout out that I made a whole video on the music of Legend of Dragoon. I forget I made it. It's all text-based, so you can just kind of read along and hear all the songs. You can find out one of my favorite songs. And one of them is definitely Royal Castle. This song is, it's got a lot of vocal synths, I should say, which to me is one of my favorite things that you don't really hear too much anymore, but it especially sounded really good in like the PS1 era. Of course, it's got the horns and this kind of royal feel, but it's one of these just very interesting sort of moods. The genre is kind of a mystery to me. It's just nice, but I don't know, it just sounds like a quintessential castle theme, yet it still sounds very different. And the other thing is that there's another song in this game which very much would fit like the traditional bill of like a castle theme. It's much later in the game, and that one, as good as it is, it's a little too, like, in comparison to this one, that one was like way more just very generic horns, and I mean, there's like nothing going on in that song really. It's a cool song and it's a cool place. It's a very important place. But Royal Castle is just a vibe that's why it's in here, because we're in a vibe video. And it's just one of the most memorable songs. It gets stuck in your head immediately. There's a lot of cool covers of it on YouTube, and I just think it's one of the songs that everybody should hear. I think The Legend of Dragoon is severely underrated and needs to come back, whether through a remake or a remaster, it doesn't matter. I just think nowadays, considering how games are and how much people love RPGs, I think The Legend of Dragoon, although this still holds up, I think it'd be really cool to see nowadays. So that is Royal Castle from The Legend of Dragoon. Up next, we're going to be talking about Tekken 5 Dark Resurrection. The stage is called Winter Palace. The song is called Snow Castle. This is from composer Goshina. And before I even get to talk about the aesthetic and what's going on here, I would just like to say that if you've ever heard any other Goshina music, you would think, yeah, this sounds exactly like Goshina. I don't know how else to describe that. He just has a very memorable sound. He's been with Namco for a while, so he's in the Tales games, Mr. Driller, a bunch of stuff. But he tends to use these kind of like high-pitched, female vocals kind of in a lot of places, and it's definitely present here. This place is so. Just a brief history. I did not play Tekken 5. I know very little about it, but with that said, Tekken 5 has probably my favorite soundtrack out of all the Tekken games. And what's even funnier than that is I haven't even heard every song from that game. I've only heard like 4 or 5 songs, this being one of them. Hall of Fate, amazing. Moonlit Wilderness, amazing. Estrada de Estrella, amazing. This, what was the other one? Formless Like Water. Like, there's so many, and I haven't even heard of them all. There's still like maybe, I'd say like a third left that I haven't heard. But Snow Castle is kind of one of the few places I think that have come back in the series. So it debuted in 5, and then, oh, I could be wrong about this, but I think, so there was Tekken 5, which released in arcades, and then it came to console. And then Dark Resurrection came out as a standalone kind of updated version of the game, which added some new characters, which I think are now like fan favorites, like Lily and Dragunov, and I believe Armor King returned back. I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure that was the case. And then I just recently learned through some research, this is a spoiler for the newest Tekken 8, so be warned. I did not play Tekken 8, but I did some research, and in the story, this is a spoiler, in the story, you get to hear the song again as like a major callback, which I think is super cool, because that callback is who you fight here. This is the sub boss, who's a Devil Jin, and that has to do with that in the Tekken 8 story, which one day I'll look at, but I haven't really checked out. Now, as far as this, the whole setting is pretty much exactly what you see here. It's a square stage. Obviously, it's a castle, but what's really cool about it, you got the tall windows. But just off frame on the right side, some of the windows are broken, letting the snow from outside come in. So you see it on the floor. It's just kind of coming in very subtly. It's really cool. It feels very cold in there. You got the red stairs, of course, up to the throne. And I do remember in Tekken Tag 2, this stage came back with a breakable wall, which is the wall we're looking at right there. And it added a whole new section, like a floor section, which I thought was pretty neat. So I don't know how often, I don't think too often, but I don't know how often stages come back in Tekken. I think it's usually just like new stages all the time. But this one did came back at some point for Tag 2. Yeah, great song. It's super iconic. It's got really memorable violins that as soon as you hear it once, it's just one of the songs you hear and you just assume that it's probably very iconic with the community, and I would have to say that's the case. It's got this gothic sound, right, and it totally fits. It's not the official like theme of Devil Jin, but it's pretty closely related to him. And once you see what Devil Jin looks like, you'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, it makes total sense. But it's cool. I love hearing Goshina, and it's again part of one of my favorite soundtracks, which I should listen to at some point, but. From the songs that I've heard, Tekken 5 and specifically Dark Resurrection has some of the coolest songs in fighting games. So that is Snow Castle from T5DR. Up next on the list is a little game called Chrono Trigger, a game that I discovered here on the channel and played as well at the exact same time I was playing Legend of Dragoon. I was playing them both at the same times, 2 iconic RPGs, although that was a lot of information for me. I remember at the time I was struggling to kind of keep up with both stories. It's a lot to take in. Don't play 2 RPGs at the same time. And this is Tyrant Castle, otherwise known as Tyranno Lair. And this is actually one of the few songs composed by Nobuo Uematsu. As some of you, if not most of you, know, that Yasunori Mitsuda is his first gig as a composer, and did such an iconic, great job that a lot of people consider this soundtrack as their favorite soundtrack ever. And Chrono Trigger was also featured in my first VGM Vibes under the Forest themes for Secret of the Forest. I love that soundtrack. It is full of bass, full of earworms, and all this other stuff. But the story of how Nobuo Uematsu became kind of associated with it was also pretty, it wasn't the best of cases. You know, apparently the main composer Yasunori Masuda was kind of working himself way too hard to the point of hospitalization and had to take a break, and production needed to continue on, so Nobuo Uematsu stepped in. This is the story to my knowledge. He stepped in, did a few songs, maybe like 4 or 5 songs, and this is one of them. And once you know that is him, you can hear it immediately. It's just got that like prog rock in it. And I remember when I reacted to this song, I immediately said, this sounds like Black Sabbath or like Ozzy Osbourne. It sounds like Mr. Crowley from Ozzy Osbourne. And then lo and behold, there's a character named Ozzy in the game, and a bunch of other, like, I think, what was it, Slash too? It's like there's a bunch of little like nods to artists in there, so I think it was totally intentional. But it really does, like, you can totally hear Nobuo Uematsu's like influences here. It's like that kind of late 70s, early 80s kind of heavy metal, and it just is great. But also on top of that is, if you are familiar with Nobuo's work, halfway through the song he goes into this sort of like arpeggiated piano-like descent, and that sounds pretty Final Fantasy-ish to me. And I really like how it's like two songs out at once that kind of bounce back and forth between these two melodies. But speaking of Final Fantasy, is in the comments for my reaction, some people were saying that this was kind of a precursor to Kuja's themes from FF9. And although I don't think that's an official thing, I can kind of hear it. You know, if you've heard any of FF9's Kuja themes with like all the build-ups, you can kind of hear a little bit of it too, you know, right? Sort of Dark Messenger-ish. And apparently another song from 5, but I never played 5 and I don't know what song. So if you know what song they're thinking of, let me know. But anyways, Chrono Trigger, of course, just iconic game. I loved all the characters, especially that frog boy down there. Artwork from Akira Toriyama. Akira Toriyama, rest in peace. And some of my favorites, just level design, and it was just a really colorful, cool game with an iconic soundtrack, 2 great composers, and I think there's just not enough nice things to say about Chrono Trigger. And it's just a game that you're going to see probably multiple times on these VGM Vibes episodes. This is now the 2nd time. But yeah, Tyrant Castle, obviously a really cool place full of dinosaurs. Well, what's cooler than dinosaurs and castles? That's it. That's all you got to say. Really cool song. We're going to now move on to another game that's been on here for the 2nd time, coming up next. Crumbling Castle from Ape Escape. Of course, I'm going to talk about this game whenever I can. For those that don't know, this is a game that I've mentioned a myriad of times. It is pretty much like my 2nd or 3rd favorite soundtrack ever of all time. It's on the PlayStation 1, an iconic series, although yet still very underrated. You know, when you think of the PS1, you think of a few names like Crash and who knows, I don't know, what's like Resident Evil, stuff like that. But Ape Escape, Snake was another one, Metal Gear Solid. But Ape Escape is like, people probably have seen like the ape mascot or something, but a lot of people just, from who I've talked to, they've never really experienced the soundtrack or played the game, and I think it's just one of those games that I can talk about forever, but I'll keep it brief. It was really revolutionary at the time. It required the DualShock controller, very unique controls, and amazing soundtrack. Like I can't even put into words the soundtrack. It's just all over the place. Composed by Shuichi Terada. The thing about this one, though, Crumbling Castle, is it's a pretty unique part in the game. Without getting too much into it, the whole synopsis of the game is apes have escaped from a like carnival type place, and they're all being controlled by one evil monkey named Spectre, and he's got this kind of mind control hat, and that's how he controls all of them. And throughout the whole game, you're visiting different time periods, and each time period has like maybe 2 or 3 stages within them. And Crumbling Castle is during the medieval section. It's called a medieval mayhem. That's the era. And this level is like pretty big. I remember it standing out. Like, it's not just a typical castle. It's a lot of platforming, vertical platforming. There's an underground water section. There's a side section. There's a outside hill. Like, it's a really large area, and you're going to be exploring the whole castle. But one thing that I remember, like, it stuck out with me when I played it is before every stage, you'll have your little assistant, and she'll point at the screen. She's like, catch X amount of monkeys, whether it's 2, 5, whatever. But this time, it just says, catch Spectre. Or it says, go catch Spectre. So it kind of feels like the game is like ending or something. You're like, whoa, what? I have to catch Spectre? You know, that's your main objective. You don't have to catch anything else. And it's one of the few places in the game that actually has a boss. There's not a whole lot of bosses in this game. But this song is just kind of the feeling of being rushed, you know, that kind of like intense feeling of like you're being chased by something. It's very layered, as in the song just starts in one spot and just keeps adding layer and layer on top of it, but doesn't really change. The percussion kind of stays persistent the whole time. Has one of the nicest and coolest synth parts that get stuck in your head. It's just you've probably heard it in the background. I've used it as background music before. It's one of my favorite songs. It's not my favorite song in the game, by the way. One day we'll talk about that one with a certain biome. But when I think of castles, this is one of the first ones I thought of course, just because it's just in the title. It also exists in the PSP version called On the Loose. I haven't heard of that version, though. I don't think I've heard any of On the Loose's soundtrack. It's apparently the same game, but just like on the PSP. I'd imagine the songs are probably less quality, but to be honest, I have no idea. One day I should go hear it. But anyways, Ape Escape, anytime I get to talk about it, is fantastic. And you should definitely check out the soundtrack. Which, by the way, there is the soundtrack from the game, which is how it appears in the game, and then there's the kind of re-released called the Originape soundtrack, which came out much later. I forgot what year exactly. I don't want to say the wrong year. So the one we're listening to now is from the Originape new soundtrack. They're all the same. They just sound like crisper and everything, but you can find the originals on YouTube as well. Anyways, Ape Escape. Anytime I get to talk about it, it's fantastic. But speaking of medieval times, I think it's finally time that I get to talk about a really cool game that you may be familiar with, also on the PlayStation 1. We now finally get to talk about a game that I grew up with called Medieval, which also re-released as a remaster, I believe in 2019. This is the cover for the remaster. And obviously it's starring Sir Daniel Fortescue. This is kind of one of those other sort of, in my opinion, kind of iconic PS1 faces, similar to like your Snake and your apes and your Crashes. I think a lot of people have seen Sir Daniel Fortescue. And to me, this song exists in two versions. There's the original, which is just The Haunted Ruins, which is the stage it plays. And in the remaster, it was given a title called A Marrow Escape. It's a pun on bones. And composed by Paul Arnold and Andrew Barnabas, otherwise known as Bob and Barn. Which I thought was another interesting thing. I didn't know that either. Is, you know, you don't really hear of like composer duos. And they've been around for 30 years and they're still doing it. And they composed the remaster as well. So they composed the original and they came back to do the other stuff. So I thought that was kind of cool. When I have the playlist live for this episode, I'll have both in there. I like them both, but I prefer the original just a little bit more. So before I talk about the song, I want to talk about kind of what makes Medieval pretty cool. If you're a fan of like The Nightmare Before Christmas and the Tim Burton stuff and Danny Elfman's music, you will feel right at home with this. Imagine, I mean, he kind of looks like Jack Skellington, to be honest. But if you're into that whole aesthetic, that music of, you know, The Nightmare Before Christmas, imagine that with like an action adventure, very Halloween. If you wanted a game to play for Halloween or something, this is it. Either version, the original stands up, but the remastered obviously, looks nice as hell. But I would like to speak about the first game really quick, and I think this was a perfect, like, it came out at the right time, because if you recall, the PS1 and the PS2 a little bit had a thing called draw distance. So nowadays, obviously, if something's like way far in the background, it's not a big deal because the technology can handle it. But in the PS1 days, something that wasn't too far away, it was just drenched in like a fog or black or some solid color. And in this game, it worked so well. So in this, like, here's an example. This is why I chose this thumbnail. This is the remaster, right? See that whole purple sky background? In the original game, that would just be black. And to my knowledge, I don't think that was, I'm pretty sure that wasn't intended. I think that was just limitations, but it worked. Like, if you look at the original game, it looks way scarier because of the draw distance. And it totally worked in its favor. So I thought that was super cool. Now, the song. The reason why the song is special is, first of all, I think the music is extremely underrated in this game. Just, me, I like this sort of scary, spooky, cartoony kind of thing. But is the story, right? I don't want to get too into it, so you can play it yourself. But the synopsis, which isn't really spoilery, it's all explained to you at the very start, is our hero, Sir Daniel Fortescue, was in life a kind of pompous, sort of like just regular person with hubris, and he had a lot of stories that he would tell the king, and then the king would kind of like promote him into this what's the term here, the battalion of the castle. So basically, long story short, when the court magician goes evil, Zarok, the main antagonist, and pretty much launches an attack on the castle and everyone, the king appoints Sir Daniel Fortescue and everyone else to go fight him. Sir Daniel is the first to die. And, he was supposed to be this hero, and obviously he just was nobody, right? And the king was like so embarrassed that he kind of spun these tales that made him, more heroic than he was. And then much later, when Zara comes back and wants to like build a stronger army, he brings back everyone that's dead, including the villagers and everyone, and that's including Sir Dan, and that's how he comes to be. So it's not just your like good versus evil. It's just like he has a kind of a reason to be fighting him, because now he can redeem himself. He was the first to die. He was kind of a loser and kind of got promoted through luck, and now he's this, while dead now, he can redeem and take over, or not take over, or like be the hero that he was meant to be. So with that, I'm bad at explaining things, but that's pretty much the synopsis. But because of that, when you hear this song, this is when in the game, when you return home. So the whole game, you're kind of, you're obviously, you start in the graveyard where you have been resting for a while. And as you make your way up the mausoleums and everything, you go back to the castle, which is now infested with monsters from Zarok. That's why it's called the Haunted Ruins. But it's just this kind of like, once you know all that, and then you hear this music, and you realize Sir Daniel Fortescue is back home, it's this sort of kind of full circle moment that's pretty touching in a game that is comes off as sort of comedic, but again, once you know that, it just kind of has this really nice feeling to bring the storytelling somewhere else, because not a whole lot is happening in the song per se. It's more about just knowing all the context, right? And that's, for me, really important, because 9 times out of 10 when I hear songs on this channel, I have no context. So for me to know the context and be telling you, it's kind of like, it's different, it's foreign. It's like I know what I'm talking about for once. So I think Medieval is a game that's severely underrated, and I wasn't a big fan of the second one, to be honest, but whatever. I still played it. Still cool, but meh. I think it's just a game that everyone should experience, and you might have maybe brushed it to the side because it didn't look like it was for you. But it's a really cool game, and it's stood the test of time. I think Sir Daniel Fortescue is a hero that should be recognized. But that is The Haunted Ruins, or A Marrow Escape from Bob and Barn, dual composer from 1998 and 2019. All right, that's a whole lot. On to the next. Next on my list is a game called Is the Oath in Felghana. The song is called Valestein Castle. And I'm going to keep this one kind of brief because this is another game that I know nothing about. I have never played a Falcom game, but the song is so impressive that I had to put it on here. And I remember when I reacted to it, it just kind of like blew me away. And it wasn't until recently that I saw footage for it. And man, I gotta be honest, this game looks really fun. It looks really cool. I'll say this now. Nothing official, but if I ever do play an East game or a Falcom game, I think my first one would be this one, just based on that footage. Like it just looked really fun, and it looked like it's like it still holds up. So what I do know is that Falcom take their music department very seriously. A lot of the music is fantastic. I've heard nothing bad from either any of the East or any Falcom games. But from what I saw of the footage here, I don't know what's happening, by the way, but it is like the epitome of a castle, right? You got like the red carpet, you got the stone walls, you got torches for light, you got like spikes coming out of the ground. It's action packed. The song starts like as soon as I think you like walk into it. Like I think I could be wrong, but I think you choose like from an overworld and then you enter it as opposed to like an open world. I could be wrong about that, but either way, as soon as the stage starts, boom, the song is going. And this was the other song that I was talking about earlier. This is not that Moon Over the Castle wasn't the fastest. This is the fastest. Very reminiscent of kind of like late 80s power metal and stuff. And I really just like it. And I think this song is going to be kind of my catalyst to playing my first Falcom game. And I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure this was the first East song I ever heard and the first Falcom like I ever experienced. I don't know that exactly, but I'm like 90% sure. So that makes it just a little bit cooler. But honestly, just the song is... Oh, it is. I actually wrote that down. I'm silly. I have like notes that I'm kind of like... Yeah, so ignore what I said. This is the first East song I heard and the first Falcom I experienced. So I think it's even more of a reason to check it out because I don't even know if they're available like on Steam or anything, or if I have to... Either way. Don't know anything about this series, but I feel like I couldn't... This is one of the songs that inspired the whole video, by the way. I remember when I was thinking of castle stuff, this song came up in my head. So yeah, we're now getting into some pretty heavy hitters, and I hope you're ready because the next game is a game that I adore. I love this song, Adelheid Castle from Wild Arms. Wild Arms is such a great experience. It's another game that I discovered here. And for those that don't know, my favorite composer of all time is Ennio Morricone, the famed Italian composer who did music for all these classic spaghetti western films. And it's just music that I just love from the deepest depths of my heart. And when I found out that Wild Arms music, which was composed by Michiko Naruke, was heavily inspired by that, I had to jump on board. And although the game was different than I originally imagined, I thought it was going to be like Western based. It's not. It's just the music is, but apparently future games are, but I only played one. Anyways, Wild Arms, you know, I haven't been around too long, but in the 2 years or so that I've been playing RPGs, you know, I've been in the community for a little bit, and no one really talks about this game. I feel like it's just an RPG that went under a lot of people's noses, And I feel like if you like Chrono Trigger and games that are very similar to that, I think you would pretty much fall in love with Wild Arms. It's like right up there. The battles are cool. The characters are great. The intro movie is probably the best intro movie of all video game time history. I totally okay with saying that. I never skipped it once. The music is fantastic. This is the second appearance of Wild Arms on the VGM Vibe series. I put the battle theme on there, which was fantastic. The thing about this song is you hear it very early, so it's good. It also shares a motif with another song called Ancient Culture Exhibition. The thing about what I like about it is that we've covered a lot of castle stuff already, right? We've covered fast, metal, scary, you know, just all these different types of moods. But this one is kind of the lighthearted, nice, calm, just wholesome sounding one. But the thing about it is that it starts very regal. It's got like when you first hear it, you're like, okay, yeah, that's a castle theme. There's almost no denying it. It's a castle theme as soon as it starts. But then pretty shortly afterwards, once the song gets into the verse, it gets very catchy, and I'm almost can guarantee it's gonna get stuck in your head. You're gonna start whistling it back, and then just imagine like playing the game and you're in this castle for a while. You're going to hear it back multiple times. And it is just indeed a castle. It's got like this little royal dining hall and, you know, corridors and all that. And I love this song. I was also a big fan of the town that's right outside of it, which is just Adelheid. Every song in this game, yeah, the soundtrack is phenomenal. It's still one of my favorites. Probably like one of my top like 5 RPG soundtracks I've heard. It's so good. I want to revisit the other games. I know there's another remake of this called Alter Code F, which I don't know much about, but apparently it's out there. And another thing I wanted to bring up is just there is a cool cover of this on YouTube from a channel called Black Sail Pass. And I saw it, and they covered this song right here. So if you like it, go check that out. They don't know I'm doing it. They have just a few hundred subscribers and like a couple views on that video. So I think it would mean a lot to me if you go check that out and just, you know, get some more views on it. You know, I was once a small YouTuber too. I still feel like I am sometimes, but I think sometimes if something's good enough, it deserves some views. And anytime there's more Wild Arms exposure, great. So go check out the Adelheid Castle theme from Black Sail Pass. Don't know what else they've done, but yeah, this song is fantastic. It's definitely one of the songs that as soon as I was making this video, I knew it was going to go in there. So huge fan of Michiko Naruke, and I cannot wait to someday return to the sequels. But yeah, this soundtrack is amazing, but especially Adelheid Castle. Up next, we're going to go back 6 years into the very first year of the 90s, 1990, with Super Mario World on the SNES. Yeah. I'm going to be honest, I do not know pretty much anything about this game. I'll tell you as much as I know, but it's here for a special reason. From what I do know, this is Koji Kondo, right? And I think we've all heard of Super Mario World at some point of our lives. It's one of those games that I think just exist within video games and you just heard of it. I've never played it. But when I was making this video, I'm pretty active on Patreon, and I asked my Patreon members, as I do with the VGM Vibe series, it's not just me, it's what I consider like your favorites as well. So I asked, you know, I'm making a video on castle themes, tell me some songs that just need to be in this video, right? And after I got some suggestions, I got a lot of votes, and this did not win. This got second place. But by the sheer amount of votes, I was still curious. And not only that, is I've never heard Super Mario World before. So I was like, okay, let me check it out. And I reacted to it recently. I've heard it since then, maybe like 10 times. And man, totally not what I expected. So I'm no expert on it. I've seen footage of it, And from what I've gathered and from the comments, this is a reoccurring theme. I think there's more than just one castle. In my head, what I thought it was going to be like a main castle at the end, but I think there's just multiple castles, and every time you enter that castle or a castle setting, this place, that's what I've seen, like a little bit of footage, and from what I've seen, it's like pretty intense platforming. You got like cages you're walking on, and it's like lava instead of water as the pits, and they just look kind of difficult, right? The song suggests also that it's like a difficult area too. And something I was told in the comments, but I don't know myself, is that this motif is in a lot of the songs in the game. That sounds really fascinating to me. One day I'll experience that. So yeah, I that's crazy, because to me this sounds so like I couldn't really hear it as anything else, but apparently it just exists throughout the game. So to my understanding as well too, is like when during gameplay, I've only saw like 2 videos, mind you, but during gameplay, when you are transitioning into the castle, like before you enter the door, there's like a little fade in, like the screen like distorts. And I think that also correlates with the intro of the song, that little like, I could be wrong about that, but I think that's the case. But the sound of this song is so bizarre to me. It sounds so creepy and odd. It sounds really good in your ears, by the way. It's like a really like almost like ASMR style song. Like the bass is hitting really hard, like the frequency of everything is just really nice. It's smooth, it's aged perfectly. It's got this really quick arpeggiated section that's very impressive, and then followed by this kind of warpy, you know, like it's just it just kind of sounds to me like sort of like instantly iconic. Did I write anything else here? Oh, apparently these places also auto scroll. I could be wrong about that, but from what I saw, it looked like the stages were like moving and you just had to catch up. Is there anything else I wrote? I wrote here, I didn't say this in the reaction, but when I heard it a couple times, this song is very reminiscent of like classical music. It's got movements, so it's not just, you know, your verse, chorus. It's like, here's this little doo-doo-doo-doo, and then this little and then it kind of stops in its tracks, and then it goes into another movement. So I have no doubt in my mind, I had not looked it up, I'm sure it exists, just because it's one, Super Mario, and because of the way it sounds. I'm sure it exists. There's probably some like classical covers of this, or at least someone with like, you know, classical style instruments, because it just by the sound of it, it'll translate super, super well. So my first and only experience in Super Mario World was a good one. I was saying that in my head, all the Mario music sounded like the main theme that everybody else knows, but I'm learning slowly that that is not the case whatsoever. It is very diverse, and so far this is the darkest song I've heard in Mario. And Koji Kondo, who I originally thought was just like the Zelda guy, apparently is not only the Zelda guy, but like the Mario guy and like the Nintendo guy. And I'm hearing a lot of cool stuff from him. But speaking of Koji Kondo, 1 year later, after this game, he created another little masterpiece. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, Hyrule Castle. This song actually was the winner of that poll by a landslide. This is the song that the people have spoken for, that I must hear. And wow, as soon as I heard it, within maybe like 20 seconds, you know, I had some pressure going into the song. I immediately thought to myself, oh yeah, this is deserving of that. It's like instantly classic. I just was so drawn to it, you know. First of all, the intro of the song is incredible. Dun 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 dun. Right? That is like, oh, that's so cool. And this is 1 year after the last song. Like 1 year. Like, dude, I can't even remember what I do in 1 year's time, let alone create two, not even just songs, but two soundtracks. Anyways, so Koji Kondo now for this game, A Link to the Past. I don't know which game this is. I don't know Zelda at all. I don't know if it's I think it's the second game or first game. It's one of the first like 3 games. I think I know that much. But when I heard the song, it caught me by surprise. I was like, whoa, this sounds darker than I imagined. And I still feel that way because a lot of the Zelda stuff I've heard has been kind of, upbeat and very just like catchy stuff, but it was never really like moody. And this one was moody. So I think in my reaction I said something like it sounds like very end game and finale. But from what I've seen, this is like really early on. So that's I don't know if every game is like that, but at least in this case, it shows up quite early, and that's something because it makes you think like, damn, this is like this intense, this quick. But speaking of other games, when I did that reaction, I heard the same song from like 4 or 5 different games. Like, I think I don't know if it's confirmed, but I think it might be in every game. Like, it's an iconic section of like the lore of Zelda, or at least in most games. Yeah, instantly memorable. It's just this crazy cool sound, and musically, it's got this really cool idea where it's got staccato notes and legato notes. And the easiest way to think about that is staccato sounds very like the word stuck. So like dun 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 dun. And then legato would be the opposite, which is very smooth. So while that's happening, you have doo 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 doo. So you got like two, opposite flows to the notes, and yet they kind of make themselves stand out. A little bit of a counter, not necessarily a counter melody, although they are counter melodies, but I just thought that was really interesting. And just everything about it sounds so memorable, I guess. And, I'm not going to lie, going into it, it's the one that people voted on. It's the one people, and it's Zelda, and it's Nintendo. So I had a lot of things that just made me think, damn, this is, I hope I can. Because a reaction is so, I don't know. I try to treat them, I treat them as organic as I can to me, as my personality. But, I really don't take them lightly. I get to hear them one time and one time only. I hope that my internet never cuts out during a video. I go out of my way to not even listen to the first like 2 seconds. I want to experience it for the first time. The only downside is I don't get to experience it the way most of you experience it, and that's by playing the game and experiencing it that way. So it's the closest I can get to it. It's like sort of a pseudo way of me living that experience. And this song is totally deserving of a castle theme. It's like it's darker than like your traditional castle theme, but I think for many people it is the castle theme. But I still think there's one more to be talked about. And like I said, these aren't ranked, so I don't think it's necessarily better or anything. But when I was making this list, overwhelmingly, like I went with my gut, like what is like the one song I think of when I think of castles? So that's kind of like what I'm getting at. And I would have done like an honorable mentions too, but there's kind of a lot, and I didn't like write them down. But for example, I wanted to give one, I guess, sort of honorable mention to Fire Emblem. There's a lot in that game. I think a lot of the songs in those games could have fit in here, and I couldn't really pick one. So if you're a Fire Emblem fan, I tried my best to think of one, and I'm sure there's many that could have fit in here, but I think the whole series could have qualified. But alas, we are just choosing, in this case, 15. I think I've always done 15 if I think about it. I never was intending to do that, but there is one game and there's one song that I think of when it comes to castle themes, and I wonder if anyone guessed it by now. So we move on to that. But for now, that is Hyrule Castle from The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. So when I think of castle themes in video games, my brain was constantly navigating to a little song called The Castle from Final Fantasy VIII, composed by Nobuo Uematsu. Now, for those that have been watching this channel for a while, you're probably thinking, wow, I cannot believe this song made it. And for good reason, there's a lot to talk about here. So First of all, I'm going to try to avoid spoilers as much as I can, but there might be some. Just know that if you haven't played FF8, be wary of what I'm going to say. But, so yeah, you've been warned. So starting now, this is the final dungeon. And look at that. I mean, that just doesn't get to me, like, this is like castle everything. It's floating in the sky. It's got the moon, full moon. It's got the dark gothic nature, the tall windows, the stained glass, the red carpet, the spiral staircase, the dungeons, the outside areas, the long corridors, chandeliers, the drab colors. But if you recall, for those that don't know, I discovered FF8 on this channel, and I really liked the music, and I just finished playing FF7, so I was kind of like on a high, and I was like, ooh, let's play some more. FF8 was the only game I ever quit streaming. I did not finish it on stream. I just was not feeling the intro of the game at all. And I'm just being honest, I just so much reading, junction, a lot of tutorials. I thought the UI was really ugly. It was just gray and black. It just didn't, and I remember like seeing a dinosaur in the first like 10 seconds. I was just like, what the hell is this, you know? But I did finish it. I didn't even take a break from it. I took like a 2-day break, and then I just finished the game off stream, and I enjoyed it. It's a very confusing game, I will say that, but we're not here to talk about the game entirely. It's just it's a polarizing game anyways. You know, people hate it or love it. I think for me, it's and most people would probably agree that you grow an appreciation over time. Some people like it from the start. Some people never like it, but I grew to enjoy it as the time went on. Anyways, Ultimisia Castle, as great as the song is, which we'll talk about in a second, I hated this place. I thought it was pretty difficult. You know, like you got to be quite leveled. You got to know what you're doing at this point. Like I said, there's puzzles. There's it's your first time there. It's like there's a lot of doors you can enter, hard-hitting enemies, and I think even like a really some really important iconic enemies are here too. And this theme though, and then one more thing is after I played the game, I made another video talking about all the music in FF8, and I ranked them my favorite top 20. And guess which song did not make it onto that top 20? It wasn't even an honorable mention. But I did react to it too, a long time ago before I started playing the game. And I remember, still to this day, I'll get comments like, why is the castle not on there? How can the castle not be on there? First of all, FF8's music is super hard to rank. Any games are hard to rank. But 8 has an incredible soundtrack. So while I still, my opinion didn't change, I don't think it's in the top 20 songs. Let's just pretend it's like 21 or something. It's still a good song. But where it does shine is where it belongs. Some songs are just, they just sound better in better places. And if we're going to talk about castle themes, this is like quintessential castle theme. I mean, come on, like it starts off with this super Dracula organ. We got this just creepy sound all over the place. We got the harpsichord going crazy. This nice little jester-like interlude. To me, it was kind of like a no-brainer. I was like, okay, castles. First one that came to mind, FF8 Castle. But it's bizarre though, right? Like, I wanted to be clear, like I'm not ranking these as like favorites or anything, because I just said in FF8 this isn't even close to like one of my favorite songs, not even close. But I think that I couldn't make a castle video without talking about the song. As much as I didn't like this dungeon and the game was okay, I think it's sort of like a credit where credit is due type of thing. And funny enough, it's almost like a redemption arc in a way, because I think people thought I just forgot about this song or just hated it. I don't really hate songs unless they're absolutely terrible on the ears. like Crazy Bus or something. It's just certain things are better for certain areas. In this case, the song had to marinate for a year or so after I made those videos, because here we are. I think the song is fantastic for what it is, for where it belongs. It makes you scared of this place, which it does the moods perfectly. It sounds like a castle. It sounds like a final dungeon. It sounds evil. It sounds messed up. And it's all that stuff. So it's perfect for that. And I think that regardless of what your opinion is, we're all allowed to have opinions. I don't make these videos so people can agree with me. That'd be silly. Whether you think Hyrule or Super Mario or any other game, I think anyone who's played FF8 totally would understand why the castle is here and should be in any talk about castle themes. I think it's not only that, I forgot to mention one of the big things is to me, this song sounds like a kind of like little brother song to Dancing Mad, right? I heard Dancing Mad first, and that song stuck with me, obviously, like it does for most people. I think it's the third movement. Yeah, this song starts, it sounds like Dancing Mad a little bit. It's got that kind of like evil, chaotic nature. And I love that, you know? It sounds like, I don't know many Nobuo songs that have this really dark organ, kind of Dracula sounding sound. I know he likes the organ and stuff, but not like this. So, yeah. As much as 8 is polarizing and, you know, hot dogs and floating stuff and time travel and the music, undeniable. And this song, I think, is just one of the quintessential castle themes that exist that I've ever heard so far. You know, if your song didn't make it, then there's probably going to be another episode for Castle Vibes. There's a lot of castle songs out there. So let me know which ones I missed. Let me know if what your memories are with any of these games, especially this one. And I'm glad I was actually able to talk about this song particularly, because this kind of goes with any of those ranking videos. Like, it's hard to not talk about the other songs because people think that I just don't like the other ones. Do you know how hard it is to rank games or songs from games that are like 90 OST? Like, it's hard. But anyways, that is VGM Vibes 4. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I really like castles, and we're going to be talking about another, I don't want to reveal it yet, but when VGM Vibes, we're going to be talking about another cool theme, let's just say that. And I think it's an important one. And let's just keep listening to more castle themes, more video game music. It's always such a cool thing to talk about these things, especially outside of a reaction, because I get more experience. Oh, and one side thing is I was really close to putting Sid's theme from Final Fantasy IX in here, which is the one you hear in, oh god, what's it called? What's the name of that place? God, I'm sorry, I can't think right now. But you know where you hear Sid's theme, Limblum. That is like a really like quintessential castle theme as well. But then I would have Nobuo Matsu on here 3 times. So yeah, but shout out to FF9 too. Okay, so I will see you in VGM Vibes 5. Thank you for all the contributions. I hope you had fun, and thanks to everyone here that would make this possible. I couldn't be here without them. They're my patrons. Thanks to all the requesters for these songs. If I remember, I'll put them in there, and I will see you there. My name is Jesse in the Auditorium. I hope you have a fantastic day, evening, night. Peace.